finals starting this week. The Celtics are currently up 1-0 against the Indiana Pacers in an amazing overtime victory by 2 points thanks to Jaylen Brown coming in clutch, as all North Georgia boys do. And the Mavericks beat the Timberwolves last night, 1-0 series lead with that. Only a 3-point victory, tight game. Great playoff basketball so far in these conference finals. Now, I will address the fact that last week my predictions were plain horrible. I said the Nuggets were going to beat the Timberwolves in Game 7, and that did not come to fruition. I mean, all indicators pointed that they won like 2 straight, and they seemed to be rolling into Game 7, but the Timberwolves were able to overcome it. Sometimes you just can't predict basketball, just like you can't predict boxing, because Tyson Fury, despite all of his physical attributes, all of his impressive wins in the past, got beat by Usyk in a 12-round split decision. And you know what? I think that fight came out the way it did just to prove to me that I should not have disrespected Muhammad Ali like I did last week. If Alexander Usyk can beat Tyson Fury, then Muhammad Ali would have certainly a great shot of taking down Tyson too. I apologize to the GOAT for my slander last week. It will not be repeated again. Size isn't everything, as the men are off to say. Though I have heard much dispute on that point, I'll leave that to y'all to decide. But Tyson Fury, where he goes from here, I'm really not sure, because that was a huge upset by Usyk. Now, granted, Tyson Fury physically came out better of that fight. Usyk has a broken jaw, and he has been suspended from boxing for 2 weeks until he starts rehab. So Tyson Fury will most likely cash in a rematch, and we'll see how that goes. But on the whole, as far as the statistics for the fight go, it wasn't insanely lopsided. I mean, Tyson Fury landed 157 punches. Usyk landed 170. Power punches, Tyson Fury landed 210 and Usyk landed 260. They've had an equal percentage. Sorry, that's the thrown. Tyson Fury landed 95 power punches and Usyk landed 122. So, I mean, they were pretty neck and neck as far as percentages go for power punches, but where Usyk really came out on top was he was a lot more concise in his punching. In total punches landed, Usyk landed on 42% of his punches and Fury landed 32. So when you combine the fact that Tyson Fury is 6'9" and like 200, who knows how much he weighs, but he's a big boy. He weighs 262 pounds. So you add that to the fact that he's throwing way more punches than Usyk and not connecting on 10% less, he probably tired out in the later rounds. And Usyk, based on the fact he has a broken jaw, was clearly not afraid to take some hits in order to land a few of his own. You add that combination, and in hindsight, you can see how Usyk would come out on top. But he was definitely not the favorite in that fight. And hopefully, for Tyson Fury's sake, he can do a good job on the rematch. Because if not, and honestly for boxing's sake, this is the problem with, I know I fuss about it a lot if you're a consistent listener here, but boxing does not do a good job of setting up their mid-popularity fighters. Because I can probably name like 8 boxers, period. And Usyk would not have been one of those boxers until I saw he was fighting Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is a star. Usyk is not. And that's not a good thing, because when you have a big upset like this, and all of a sudden it's not Tyson Fury, who most people have some passing knowledge of as your unified, undisputed world champion. It's some guy most people have never heard of before, who's never done an ESPN interview before this fight, who has never been on Jimmy Kimmel or whatever. Nobody knows who this guy is, and now he's your champion. In the NBA, they do a great job, and it's a team sport, so obviously it's a little bit different. But you have the LeBrons, the KDs, the Steph Currys, the superstar Giannis, the superstars of the league. And you also have those players who are a tier below. You've got your Kyries, your Jason Tatums, your Luka Doncic's, and people like that who are young up-and-comers or just established veterans who can slide up into that superstar role one day, and people are somewhat familiar with them. And so whenever Luka Doncic wins his first MVP, it's not some no-name coming out of the blue to win it. It's like, okay, we've kind of heard of him. He was an up-and-comer. It's pretty expected he would make the step eventually. Whereas here, it's like if you're following boxing casually, everybody's heard of Tyson Fury, and absolutely nobody has heard of Usyk. And it's like all of a sudden Usyk won. That's not cool, because if Tyson Fury won, he could have fought Anthony Joshua, and they could have had some cool other matchups. Now, Tyson Fury can still fight Anthony Joshua, but it's not going to be as big of a draw because it's not for the undisputed heavyweight title. And Usyk can fight Anthony Joshua and try to make himself a star and a household name. He could fight Deontay Wilder, but then you're in the point of where he's trying to become a star after he's already won the world title. So it's just an interesting conundrum that takes place in the boxing world from time to time. In the basketball world, let's talk about that Celtics game. The final score in overtime, 133 to 128. The main takeaway of this game is just that the Celtics are the favorites to win the NBA title as of this moment. But you can't take that for granted, because just going into it at the Pacers versus the Celtics, I would probably predict that this will be a 5-game series. 6 games, absolute max. But the Pacers have it in them to make it a tough 5 or 6 games. And if Boston can get challenged, ultimately I think it will be good for them when they do make the finals, because it'll prove to themselves that they have it within them to come out on top in those tight games. Because in the regular season, they blew quite a few games that they should have won, like that game against the Hawks where they blew like a 20 insanely big lead. So that would be a good confidence boost, games like this for the Celtics, to just give them some experience to rely on in close playoff games going forward. And it will just give them, when they lost to the Warriors a couple years back, they were young, inexperienced in deep playoff runs, and they learned something from it, clearly, because they've been running through the playoffs this go-around, and I'm picking them as the favorites right now. The Mavericks and the Timberwolves, that's a little bit more evenly matched, because neither team, as far as I'm aware, has made the conference finals or has made any sort of deep playoff run in the past couple of years. Now, the Mavericks, the X factor in this series is Kyrie Irving, because like I said last week, he does have that NBA playoff and NBA finals pedigree, and that can be the deal breaker in games like this. Kyrie, he's obviously not deterred by the spotlight of a big game, whereas all the other players in this series, this is the brightest lights they have ever played under in their NBA careers. And Kyrie showed it. He dropped 30, Luka dropped 33. They came out to play, and they're pretty much the only people on the Mavericks that came out to play. But so long as they're showing up and doing their thing, the Mavericks are in good company and have a good shot of winning the series. The Timberwolves, they just couldn't get it going offensively. They held Anthony Edwards to below 20 points, which is a heck of a feat to do, especially just based on the crazy run that he had in the playoffs. It's starting to dry up a little bit the longer you go into the series or into the playoffs, just because that's the way it goes. The teams get more competitive, the defenses get tougher, and this had an effect on Anthony Edwards' field goal percentage. This had an effect on his point totals. However, he could almost get a triple-double, so he is still being very effective. And I think this playoff run that he's on will benefit him tremendously in the long term, provided he doesn't get injured. Just because there's no better way to equip yourself for a potential NBA Finals trip than just going in there as a second-year player and being able to duke it out with Luka Doncic and Kyrie and just great talent in high-stakes basketball. And most people don't get to do that until later on in their career, if ever. So I really hope he can take this and learn a lot from it. But I'm picking the Mavericks in this series. I hope the Timberwolves win. I think that would be a lot more fun if the Timberwolves won. But I think that the experience of Kyrie plus the experience of Luka too. Luka does not have deep NBA playoff experience, but he is more of a veteran than his years in the NBA would suggest because of how long he's been playing professionally overseas, and he's just an MVP level player. So I expect this to be the year he breaks through and he'll send the Timberwolves home, and Anthony Edwards, this can be his first taste of a shot at the NBA Finals, and it'll give him something to dream about over the summer. So my NBA Finals prediction as of this moment is the Dallas Mavericks versus the Boston Celtics, which will be a fun one. Makes me really nostalgic back to the late 2000s, early 2010s. We never saw that exact matchup, but Dallas and Boston, they were both pretty tough back in those days too. For NBA fans, one thing that is going to be tough going forward is the end of Inside the NBA. The NBA has been on TNT for, as far as I know, my entire life. And that relationship is coming to an end because the NBA has not renewed their rights agreement with TNT. Instead, they will be on ESPN, NBC, and Amazon Prime next year. So all you people that are on Max watching the playoffs, you will not get to have that luxury next season. But because the NBA will not be on TNT Inside the NBA with Ernie, Shaq, Charles, and Kenny is being canceled. And that is so sad because that's one of my favorite basketball shows. Me and Levi got to go behind the scenes one time and tour the studios. It's just an amazing setup, great guys. And Ernie Johnson has said that he will not leave TNT, so he's not following the NBA. He's staying in Atlanta with Turner, and more power to him. He's 61 years old. He's been working with TNT for 40 years now. His dad worked there, so love to see the loyalty. If you go back on YouTube, there are actually videos back in the late 80s of Ernie Johnson on a TNT broadcast, obviously, doing a little mini dunk contest with Dominique Wilkins watching, and it's pretty funny. But it'll be interesting to see what's next for Chuck, Shaq, and Kenny. I mean, the three of them, or some combination of the three, end up going to Amazon or NBC to continue pretty much doing the same show without Ernie. I say those two and not ESPN because Charles Barkley has said point blank that he would not want to work for ESPN just because of how hectic of a schedule it is, because they require you to be on a bunch of different programming and things like that. So it would have to be NBC or Amazon for the true vibe to be there, because you can't have that show without Charles Barkley. He is the man that is fueling that Inside the NBA fire. But we'll see. It'll be just interesting to see how it works out. And honestly, it's not like Shaq and Chuck and Kenny are hurting for money. If they just wanted to call it a career and go relax, more power to them as well. Now, J.J. Redick has been in hot talk lately to become the Lakers head coach, and quite frankly, that is just a stupid decision on the Lakers' part. J.J. Redick was a decent NBA player. He is a less than decent NBA analysis, and he now has a podcast with LeBron James. That's pretty much the extent of his resume. One thing you'll notice that was not on that resume is any sort of coaching experience. Now, if they wanted to hire him as an assistant coach or some sort of behind-the-scenes personnel role first and then work his way up through the years to become a head coach, by all means, go for it. But in what world do you just get handed the head coaching position of the Los Angeles Lakers with no coaching experience to your name, and you're also not an all-time great player? I've listened to his podcast with LeBron. He seems very knowledgeable about basketball. But what are you doing, guys? Really? The future of the Los Angeles Lakers is, and all of the problems that they have that led to them getting bounced in the play-in tournament, or the first round of the playoffs, are going to be solved because of some first-year coach, even if it is J.J. Redick. I don't even know who's available to be hired as an NBA coach right now, but I can tell you there's got to be at least 5 better options than J.J. Redick, who has no experience to his name. If they give you the offer, take it. YOLO. It's the Lakers. What are you going to do? Worst case, they pay you millions of dollars to hang out in Los Angeles for a season before you get fired, and that's that. And sure, you might waste LeBron's last year or two, but if you get hired as a coach, he must sign off on it, so that's on him. But it's just, I can't believe that these talks and the fact that his name is being thrown around so seriously is something that's happening. Because I remember when Steve Nash got called up to coach the Brooklyn Nets, people were so mad about it. And at least Steve Nash had been an assistant in Golden State for a couple years at that point before he got handed the keys to the Nets. And even then, look how well that went with Kyrie and KD. How many championships did they get? They didn't get past the second round of the playoffs. And that can't be what the Lakers are expecting if they only have 1 year left of LeBron to just get bounced in the second. You know what? Honestly, at this point, the Lakers making the second round, that would be a big win for them. So they might settle for that. But that can't be whenever LeBron first signed there. I guess it's been 6 years ago now. What they would hang their hat on is yes, we made the second round of the NBA playoffs. Let the confetti and champagne fly. So we'll see how that goes. Now, the final 2 topics of this week's stream. I mentioned last week I would be going to a Braves game, and I did. I had a great time, but unfortunately the Braves did not play great. They lost to the Padres 3-1. They have just been getting shellacked lately. They got beat by the Cubs 7-1 last week. They got beat by the Padres again, I forget what it was. It was 10-0 or something really bad like that. They beat the Cubs 3-0 today. So at least it was 9-1. The Padres beat the Braves last Sunday. And the Braves, in a 4-game series, the Braves managed to get them 1. The Cubs, the Braves did better. They got 2 out of 3. And they're playing the Pirates tomorrow. So hopefully they can whip back into it, because this is not the team that last year was by far the best team in the regular season of baseball. the Phillies are just running away with the National League East at the moment. They're up 6 games on the Braves, and they have the best record in baseball. I mean, hopefully the Braves can get it together. And if the Braves were in any other division, they would also be one of the best teams in baseball. It just so happens that the Phillies are in their same league and pretty far ahead of them at the moment. I mean, of all the divisions in baseball right now, the distance between the Phillies in first and the Braves in second is the biggest gap, except for the distance between the Dodgers and the Padres. Now, the Dodgers have been doing pretty good in spite of the Shohei Ohtani situation, and that's exactly what I said needed to happen. If you're Shohei, the best way to get people to stop talking about all of your gambling stuff is to play well on the field and to make sure that the Angels are winning. And hey, you know what? I just Googled Shohei Ohtani, and there is only one article of the first 7 that pop up that has to do with his investigation in gambling. All the other ones are about him buying a new mansion in California for $7.85 million. You would think after your manager just stole like $20 million from you, you might be a little more hesitant to be whipping the cash around. But what's $7.85 million to a guy that just signed a $400 million contract? And then he met Cameron Brink, who is a WNBA rookie. So there you go, Shohei. Do that PR rounds in order to get people to talk about something else. Now, the final talking point of this week is the roast of Tom Brady was on Netflix, and I watched the first hour. It's 3 hours long. You know that you're the GOAT if people can roast you for 3 hours. Like, the fact that you're either the GOAT or the worst of all time, because that's a long time to be trash talking somebody. But from what I saw in the first hour, they weren't pulling any punches at Tom. The best one that I saw in that time was the Drew Bledsoe one. That was hilarious. I would recommend it to anybody that's okay with a little bit of colorful language in their comedy. I'll have to finish it and do a second half review next week. But on the whole, that has been this week in sports, and we will see y'all next time.